So here we are. It's November 3rd already. You know what today is? You know what special day this is?
I do.
I know you do. It's a holy day within the church, although it's quite often ignored, overlooked by the denomination that Wesley founded. Kind of odd, don't you think, that this day, a very favorite day of John Wesley's, would be ignored by the many who follow him? Pretty strange. In his private journal, Wesley often noted this day. In 1767, he called it a festival I truly love. And in 1788, he told us that he always finds this a comfortable day. In 1799, he called it a day that I peculiarly love. Why then, if Wesley was so very fond of this day, why is it so quite often ignored? Do we as Methodists not believe in the saints? Well, we certainly do believe in the saints. However, Wesley did caution us against holding the saints in too high a regard. In the Articles of Religion that Wesley sent to the American Methodists, he made the statement against the invocation of saints. He didn't want us to be calling upon the saints. You see, Wesley found no biblical evidence to support the practice of invocation of saints. And he discouraged those who sought out to do so. Today, we'll find a paragraph in our Book of Discipline. It's in paragraph 104, under Article 14, which is titled Of Purgatory. It reads, "The Romish doctrine concerning purgatory, pardon, worshiping, and adoration, as well of images as of relics, and also invocation of saints, is a fond thing, vainly invented, and grounded upon no warrant of Scripture, but repugnant to the Word of God." Now, having said all this, Wesley did advise against disregarding the saints altogether. In his All Saints' Day entry to his journal in 1756, he wrote, "How superstitious are they who scruple giving God solemn thanks for the lives and deaths of his saints." Scruple, in 18th century English, meant to be unwilling to do something because you think it improper, morally wrong. So following Wesley's theology, better known to us as Wesleyan quadrilateral, although please know that Wesley didn't call it this. We have the tradition of the church, which is where All Saints' Day would fall. Now, when formulating his theology, Wesley first turned to Scripture. That was the basis for everything. Everything begins with Scripture. And from there he would consider the postulates of reason and tradition and experience. Now, the tradition of All Saints' Day provides us with an opportunity to give thanks for all of those who have gone before us in the faith. It's time for us to celebrate our history. From the very early days of Christianity, there has been a feeling within the church that we consist not only of the living believers, but of those who have preceded us. And if you were to turn into Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, you'll read where we have a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. So, on this All Saints' Day, we remember those who are part of the communion of saints as we recite in the Apostles' Creed. And we continue to tell the stories of the saints gone to glory. Those who have gone ahead right alongside with the likes of Paul and Augustine and Martin Luther, John Wesley, and those we knew quite more intimately. We tell stories of Grandma who took us to church every Sunday, and of the neighbor who helped with our car on the day we had a flat tire. And remember that woman, the one we didn't know, who gave us food when we had none? Maybe you had a teacher that left such an awesome impression upon you and got you going into the right direction. I believe that we've all had someone who has gone on to glory that we can point to. And in retelling the stories of these individuals, that keeps us grounded in history. And many of these stories tell us of those little bits of God's prevenient grace. They teach us how God has provided for us through the generosity and sacrifice of others. The stories of these saints encourage us to be all that God has intended us to be. We also celebrate on this day, those that are still with us, as Charles Wesley's hymn tells us, to the glory gone, or joined by the saints on earth. There are those all around us that inspire us and encourage us, and those who faithfully follow Jesus in places where they are hated, and those who are in harm's way. It's this concept of All Saints' Day that connects us through the communion of saints. It's all of God's people on heaven and earth in the state of sanctification where we are spiritually united. Now, one of the ancient fathers of Christianity, St. Cyril of Jerusalem, he told us that being more closely united to Christ, those who dwell in heaven fix the whole church more firmly in holiness. They do not cease to intercede with the Father for us. So by their fraternal concerns is our weakness greatly helped. And he also told us, as Christian communion among our fellow pilgrims brings us closer to Christ, so our communion with the saints joins us to Christ, from whom, as from its fountain and head, issues all grace, and the life of the people of God itself. We worship Christ as God's Son. We love the martyrs as the Lord's disciples and imitators. And rightly so, because the matchless devotion toward their King and Master, we may also be their companions and fellow disciples. So what we've heard so far this morning is a description of one who may have been officially recognized as one who is deserving of great respect or reverence. It's also one who has died and gone to heaven. Now you may also have heard the description that a saint is one who is a member of a religious group or of some kind or another, or the saint may be a particularly virtuous person. Well, that just about covers all of us in this room, doesn't it? Of course, none of us here may be up for canonization, but we do belong to a particular religious group, even if it's just our own religious group of one. And there may be even an extremely virtuous person among us this morning. Who knows? I read a story a while back about a single dad who had a young son. They had just moved to a new town and Dad wanted to take his boy to church. Now, Dad chose a church, but he didn't do enough research, so he didn't know what time Sunday school was. So he and his son together went on to the worship service. Well, the morning message was about the saints. The pastor spoke a bit about the history of the church and about people like Peter, James, Mary, and her sister Martha. He talked about those who knew Jesus personally. He even talked a bit about the early church with people like Tertullian and Augustine, who helped the church along during a time of confusion and controversy. The pastor then moved along about 1,000 years and told the congregation about Martin Luther, John Calvin, and St. Teresa. It was those folks who challenged the church to look at faith a bit differently and to seek a different, deeper relationship with God. And then when he got to more modern times, He spoke about Mahatma Gandhi, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., those who fought for the rights of all people. Now, while the pastor was talking, the little boy became fascinated by the stained glass windows that lined the walls of the sanctuary. It was a bright sunny day that morning, and the colors were glorious. The room looked as if a rainbow had shattered through the windows and covered the congregation with all sorts of radiant shapes, blue, gold, green, purple. The windows depicted some of the people that the pastor had been talking about, and the colors now filled the entire church. Well, on the way home, Dad asks his son what he thought about the church, and the boy said that he liked it. And Dad asked him, well, were you listening to the pastor? And the boy said, yeah, a little bit. And the father then asked, well, do you know what he was talking about? And the boy said that, yeah, he was talking about some people he called saints. Well, Dad, wanting to keep the conversation going, asked him who those saints were. And the boy responded with this: they are the people who the light shines through. Now there's a definition for you. The saints are those who the light shines through. It's not just those who have done some dramatic thing in history. Yes, the saints are those who have defended the faith, and they are the ones who have fought for the rights of all people. But they're also the ones who have opened up our eyes to see God in the midst of our blindness. Those who have helped us see past our old ways of thinking and seeing things as they've always been. You know what I mean? Seeing past those we've always done it this way kind of thoughts. The saints are legendary, and they're common people like you and me. Anyone who lives by the Bible and helps others to do the same, those are the saints. And as the young boy in our story said, the saints are the ones who the light shines through. God placed us here to make a difference in this world, to make it that much better, to be a saint. John D'Amelio, a professor of philosophy and literature at Salem State University, who was also a professor of religion and ethics at Endicott College, and he gives us this: contrary to public perception, being a saint does not mean that you have to be canonized or immortalized in a statue in some cathedral. Sainthood is more ordinary and dirty than that. It's more profane than it is sacred. It is every day. It's going into this dark world and making it just a bit brighter. This can be accomplished by word, by deed, by simply following God's call and letting the radical, other-affirming, liberating message of Christ's gospel guide you and flow through you. Embrace that task, my friends. Embrace it. Go into the world and let God's light shine through you. And it may it rain the gospel's beautiful rainbow of truth across every road you take and upon every encounter you have on this sacred journey. As one of my favorite songwriters has said, each small candle lights a corner in the dark. It came from Roger Waters of Pink Floyd. Friends, be that candle. Be that candle so that others may see. Amen. Amen. Let's stand if you're able and open up our hymnals to number 710 and sing the faith of our fathers. This memorial of light and life and the sharing at the table of our Lord is a service of remembrance so that we can give thanks to God for the lives and deaths of those who have labored here with us as colleagues and family in the church here on earth, reminding us of our connection with the church, gone to glory, triumphant in God's love. And so this is a service of triumphant joy as we remember and celebrate those who surround us in a great cloud of witnesses. They are invisible onlookers. And as we continue the noble tradition that they have bequeathed to us, we gather here today because of their faith. We are gathered here in this place because they have gone before us and believed, preached, taught, and lived the gospel. We who are gathered here today have faith because those who have gone before us were faithful. We who are gathered here to answer the call and are here because they gathered together across the years, and many of them tough years of hardships, low salaries, sacrifices, and self-denial. Some of those years had seasons when the crops didn't bear, and the rain was scarce, and the harvest was scant. The apportionments were hard to meet, and the budget was meager. Some of those whom we remember today and whose lives and deaths we render thanks to God for lived through the Depression and lean years of soup and bread lines in the WPA and the CC camps. Some of them had lived through years of a broken and splintered church, a church who struggled and continues to struggle with the compelling and critically important issues of race, ethnicity, gender, and justice. Some of them lived through and survived a period of a hostile and divided nation, and yet they kept faith. And they labored toward the day when their faith would be sight, not even receiving what was promised, and yet they obtained a good report through faith, answered the roll call, and stood and joyfully, thankfully joined in with others from across the fields, the farms, the rivers, the creek, the highways, and the byways. By the record of their lives, they reassure us that endurance is possible because of their faithfulness and their devotion to the spread of the gospel and their belief in the power of a triune God who draws straight from crooked lines, and their utter resolve that Calvary's hill is higher than Capitol Hill. We are here as stewards of this divine mystery. By their perseverance and their sustaining trust, we can have confidence that sorrow may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning, when we will understand it all better. They show us from afar how to run with perseverance the race that is set before us by looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of their faith, in us and through us. They can be perfected. Amen.